Hello and thanks for stopping by. This is Dungeon Keeper Classic for Windows 95, and I'm playing this one in DOSBox on a Windows 10 machine. This one was published by Electronic Arts in 1997, and it seems to work just fine in DOSBox. You can buy this game online for a couple of bucks, and I think it's actually worth it. This was one of my 50-cent flea market games from this past summer. This one's a total catch, plus it has a manual in the CD, which is awesome. Because there are going to be these keyboard commands that are very useful for you to navigate this one. Now we're talking 90s PC graphics here, Sound Blaster audio, and a game that's unique and fun to play. There is a game patch out there that balances the game a little, and there's also a fan-made plugin that you can get out there, and it's actually still being developed, I think. There are some serious fans of this game. I found a few websites that are out there keeping this one alive. I'm going to link to some of them in the video description. In this game, you play a demon, and you're in charge of building a dungeon. I guess you could call this one dungeon management software. I think that fits. In this one, you control imps. They're these little monsters you start with, and they're used to dig out tunnels. They're going to gather wealth and just basically help you grow your dungeon. You're going to take over different areas. You're going to eventually have to defend your dungeon. You're going to create different types of rooms, and you're going to gather monsters and part of your forces to fight things. It's a lot of fun. At its fundamental core, it's a resource management game. It's similar to Age of Empires maybe, or StarCraft in some respects, but here it's a little opposite in how those games work in some ways. Mainly, you don't play the good guys. You're not the knights that are clearing out the bad guys from a dungeon. You're a demon building the base with the dungeon horde in it. You're not building on top of a landscape, you're digging out beneath a landscape, and you're making yourself some nasty dungeon to kill things. It's just different, I guess. The first few levels of this game, they do a really good job of getting you up to speed. They limit how much you can build, how much you can develop, and they sort of roll new functions out for you slowly to help you get up to speed. I think it really works. Learning to navigate in this one, I think, is probably the most important. We have a 3/4 view here. You can't see everything easily in every room. You're going to need to use the mouse to move around, and use the keyboard to better control your view with the camera. If you press Control up and down, it will zoom in and out. You press Control left and right, it will rotate the camera clockwise and counterclockwise. That's very important. The better you can get used to manipulating this map, the better you're going to be able to keep track of what's going on, and that's important here. You need to know what's going on at different parts of your map at different times. You can also press Escape, and you can access a game menu. You're going to find options in here. It's where you find the save menu. You start your game with a dungeon core. This is basically your main room. You need to protect this one. If you lose this room, you lose the game. On the opposite side, if the enemy has a core, which most levels will have a core, you destroy the core, you beat the enemy. You start with a handful of imps every level, and you're going to use your mouse to move the cursor. Imps are your builders. You left-click the mouse button, and you'll select a dirt block somewhere or a gold block somewhere, and they will mine what you just selected. Imps generally, they have artificial intelligence, but they first dig away a space. Then when they're done with all the digging orders, they will claim that space as something that you now control. When the area is claimed, you can now build on that spot. It's important to know because you can actually, if you go on a tear digging things early on, say you set all your imps to digging out a huge area, they're going to spend a ton of time digging out the area, and they might not stop to claim the land until all the digging is done. So you're going to need to get used to the timing of when you're digging versus claiming, or you're going to manually have to move imps off task. Maybe that sounds a little confusing, but I think when you run into it once or twice, you'll start to understand what you need to do. Your imps also mine gold. And this is what you want, because this is the currency you use in the game to build all your stuff. In other games, you might collect different items. You might collect, wood. You might collect iron, that sort of stuff. Here it's just gold. It's all gold. Now, there is a rough hierarchy of what you build in this game. Things will sort of unlock as you progress on each level. You can't just build the most advanced rooms coming out of the gates. You sort of have to do things in a particular order. It's not a definitive order, but in a general order. You're first going to want to probably build a storeroom to store your gold. Then you're going to want to build a monster lair. That will start to attract monsters. Then you want to build stores for food. You have to feed your monsters. Eventually you're going to want to build training rooms. This will help your characters and monsters level up. And then you want to create libraries. Libraries will let your warlocks learn spells. It keeps getting a little more complex as you advance through the different dungeons. They don't just give you everything to build at once. When you're on the first level, you don't know that you can build a prison, which is something you're not going to hit for another 8 levels. But eventually these things unlock and they have a place in the game. And you can control what you build when, basically. But you have to build certain things in a certain order. You're not going to get to build a prison as soon as you start a level. You have to go through other things first. You have to learn how to build other levels before that sort of unlocks for you. It makes sense. So you go about this game growing your dungeon and building your strength until eventually you're going to encounter some sort of a force in the dungeon. Maybe there's some other force that's digging out a dungeon on the opposite side of the map. As soon as you connect, something happens and your creatures will start to fight. Now there are a ton of cool things with this game. First, you're controlling the construction of a monster dungeon. What's not to like about that? It's a different thing. It's a different way to look at it. The creatures that you collect, they have their own artificial intelligence. They're going to wander and they're going to do what they want, but you can also be more manual and move creatures manually. You can smack them to make them work a little harder. You can grab them directly one at a time, or there's a grid in the game where you can just select a whole bunch at once, and you can manually place them where you want to place them in your particular part of the dungeon. If someone's invading a particular area, you can pick up a bunch of monsters and drop them right in the area. Immediately they'll jump there. It's very useful. If you want to make sure your creatures are getting trained properly and you don't want them to just wander around and find the training room, pick up a half dozen of them and drop them straight in a training room. Let them sit there for a while and learn how to do different things. Different level monsters really make a difference. A level 8 spider is a lot stronger than a level 1 spider. You can also take control of individual creatures if you want. It is a little clunky to navigate on screen. When you get a creature you want to take possession of, you have an option, you can just take possession of them and you zoom in and you're looking through their eyes. I love this feature. It's not the greatest 3D experience, and of course you can just certainly let your creatures wander around and fight things. That's perfectly fine. If you just want to be part of that action though, you can take over a creature and you can fight by looking through their eyes. Sure, it's 90s 3D graphics, but still, you can manually fight if you want to. It's just a great idea. You can also play this one multiplayer, if a friend has a copy of the disc. PC games back in the day, a lot of them were actually like this. It wasn't uncommon to have multiplayer. It was a thing. It used to happen all the time. You'd have LAN parties and you'd connect computers together, or you'd do it on the internet. It was just orchestrated differently than it is with more modern games. Online, the more common games you see today, they usually require some sort of a server to host the game. You have to have, a game pass through a service, whether it's Xbox or PlayStation, what have you. But back then it was different. You're not matching through a server with this particular game. You'd just be going along and connecting your PC to another PC. Yeah, the internet might be involved, but it is basically a direct connection. Take certain things out of the equation. A lot of things you don't have to worry about. But once you get connected for a game like this, it's actually really fun. This one also had sequels, and originally I had already played Dungeon Keeper 2. A pal of mine had a couple of discs, and we played this one for a while, and it was great. It's pretty much the same game as this. It's just unique. You're building a dungeon. You're trying to balance the speed of your growth of your forces with timing and resources to get as powerful as you can, as quick as you can. Eventually, the enemy on the map that you go against, they've been doing the same thing, and eventually you find them, and when you connect with that force, you want to make sure you're strong enough to defeat them. Hopefully the first time. If it gets really close, it'll be a long back and forth battle, which is also fun, but I'm a big fan of the steamroll win. Now, I want to be upfront with this review. I'm still a noob when it comes to this game. I played part 2 a bunch, and I've played 1. I think I'm, 8, 10 levels in maybe. But I'm definitely new to this one, and I say that because when I'm doing research and I'm going to these other websites, getting the patches and what have you, there are clearly a ton of really skilled, dedicated players out there for this game. I am nowhere near as great as some of these guys. I've seen some really cool dungeons being built online, and it's just really interesting how people love this game so much and they still play it. I guess it's pretty accessible as well. You can actually buy it online through a few different online purveyors, and people still play this game. I think it's awesome. If you think this game is something that might be of interest to you, I encourage you to go check out some of those great builders on there. You know, people that do either walkthroughs or just are playing with their friends. There are some really awesome builders out there. This one is also pretty inexpensive. I think most of these games are. You should be able to find them on GOG. I think it might be on Steam. I'm not sure if I actually looked on Steam, but I'm fairly certain you can buy this out there. It's pretty easy to get your hands on if you're interested. Well, that's all I have today for Dungeon Keeper for Windows 95 or, well, DOS. Thanks for stopping by for a look, and I'll catch you on another video.